Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and can't wait to see what's going to go down at the Mid-Atlantic Major coming up here June 16th through the 18th. And we got some legends here on our pre-show to discuss the brackets. We got Rusty Glaze, former player for Avalanche, Excessive, San Diego Dynasty. He helped coach them to a World Cup victory in 2016. Going to get his insight, breaking some numbers down. Also, one of the legends out there, Roy Richard, currently one of the leaders on Cap Factory in the 10-man. They're ranked first overall in the ICPL, and he cut his teeth playing for some legendary squads. Avalanche back in the day, also infamous, Excessive. He's recently played 10-man with Dynasty. And then also we got first bout Hall icons, Todd Adamson, played for all the top teams back in the day and currently coaching the Killers and also getting it done on the 10-man field as well. So let's bring them in. We're going to be breaking the brackets down here. We got, bracket A, B, C, and D. We're also going to be discussing the field and jumping into this. And can't wait to see the insight that we're going to get here, again, from Roy Richard, Rusty Glaze, and Todd Adamson. And there are the boys. How you guys doing here? We got, again, Rusty Glaze, Roy Richard, Todd Adamson. Rusty, we'll start with you before we jump into the brackets. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling good, man. I like to jump in and chat some paintball and get back into, memories, get a feeling for what these guys are doing out there. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, you've always had an awesome analysis. I mean, when we were teammates, the way you break fields down, and then also quite a motivational coach as well, too. And then Roy, we were teammates for a long period of time, and I love what you're still doing on the 10-man field. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling great. Excited to be here. Nerd out on some paintball. Still a huge paintball nerd. Love doing this. Love talking about paintball. Love playing it. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And then Todd, I know you got a good look at at the layout. You're coaching the Killers semi-pro. They're one of the favorites to potentially get a spot. Going to be an uphill climb there. But yeah, man, you've been one of my greatest antagonists throughout the years. Always loved playing against you. So I'm glad that you're still in the game too. How you doing this morning?
Doing good, bud. Doing good.
Okay, so let's jump into this. We're going to be breaking the brackets down today. We're going to be discussing some insight and some news with some of these squads, some of these players, see who our favorites are, who guys are liking, who we think are going to be dominant out there, who could squeak in, who's on the bubble. In bracket A, it's Dynasty, Damage, Energy Elite, Bears, and Level. So, Rusty, we'll start with you. Obviously, you're one of our best guys to go to discuss anything involving San Diego Dynasty because you played on the team for a long period of time. You coached the team to a World Cup victory in 2016. What do you think about this bracket? And then obviously all, four of us got to keep in mind, what do we think is going to be the hardest bracket? Is this the bracket of death? Dynasty, all top three teams came out of the Dynasty bracket at the last event, 1, 2, and 3. So Rusty, what are you thinking about bracket A?
For me, I feel like bracket A compared to the other brackets is the weakest bracket, the way that I gauge the brackets. So as I go down the brackets, I look at the draw, compared to what you could have had per row. And then I label each team, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 on this row. This is 1, 2, 3 on this row. And then you get a feel for did I get a good draw or not? I feel like this one ended up being the weakest bracket. You're always going to have 1 and 2, Damage and Dynasty. That'll be a split game, probably one or the other will win 50-50. But from the bottom down, you start to look at that and you feel would I rather have had Aftermath, Diesel, or ML Kings? I would definitely take Energy Elite out of that mix. So to me, this one was the softest bracket of the entire group. Now, interest-wise in the bracket, obviously the Bears came out, had a great first event, came out, had a second terrible event. So you start to think, okay, what's the trend going to be on that split? Now, the Bears come out in their first event. It's their first sort of merger with the team. When you get a new group, you have that energy of it's exciting and they did well. And then reality sits in and you're at the next event and you get, gutted. So it's how are they going to bounce back from that sort of result? You're in the pro division now and it's real. This is how it is. So now you got to show up and decide who you're going to be. So they definitely, have to make a statement in this bracket if they're going to be a contender at all.
Roy, do you agree or
sort of both?
Do you agree or disagree here with Rusty? Because, I kind of agree. Though when you look at Level, and look, paintball is very much what have you done for me lately, and both Level and the Bears did not look good at the last event, but both Level and the Bears have been so I wouldn't say surprisingly good, but impressively good in certain situations, maybe a sleeper. I mean, what do you think?
You know, I think personally Group C is probably the hardest bracket. It's close between Group A and Group C. Like I'd rather have NRG Elite than Diesel, but you know, I think I'd rather have the Bears and Level as opposed to the Russian Legion, right? And the Bears, you know, in that bracket, yeah, they're a newer team, but it's a lot of experienced, seasoned veterans on that team, and you know, they've merged, right? But it's not like these are a bunch of rookies out here trying to figure it out. These are guys who are seasoned, experienced players who've been in and around the pro scene for a long time, and they can shake it off. They know they had a slump event in their minds, right? You know, if you look at baseball, for example, a guy that's batting 300 over the career, you know, or his career, if he has a 10-game slump, you're not going to say that guy's no good at paintball anymore. He's not a good player, right? You're looking at that track record. And so most of the Bears players have been, you know, competitive pros for a long period of time. And I think they'll recover and show up at this event.
Well, I mean, as a San Diego Padres fan, I definitely love your baseball analogy because we are terrible right now. And one of the reasons that we're terrible is because we got dudes making a, you know, king's ransom in money hitting under 200. And now, you know, the Bears aren't making a king's ransom in money, but, you know, yeah, I do think that and Levels also had some serious, or, you know, some committed veterans now and some guys that have done things at a relatively elite level. They don't have Weber still, as he blew his knee out at the beginning of the season. That's a huge loss, but they picked up Damian Ryan. I love how Damian Ryan's been playing for Level, but, you know, they need more production, you know, from the D side. We'll be getting a look at the field here in a bit. Todd, let's bring you into this conversation here. Group A, bracket A. Do you think, I mean, if you, let's just say Killers, right? Killers, let's say they had, you know, won the pro spot last year. You're coaching them this year. Do you agree, disagree here with Rusty as far as the weakness of that bracket, strength? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it about the Bears coming hot the very first deal, and you know, the second sort of blowing up a little bit. You don't know how they're going to react and recover from that kind of you know, outcome. And NRG Elite, like you said, you know, you don't want the Kings. You know, it's definitely probably the weakest bracket. I agree. You know, with, you know, Dynasty and Damage, very, very consistent, very powerful teams. The Elite right now, consistently wise. But, you know, like Level, you know, losing the Weber guy, but Damian brings new energy into it. I watched him play 2 matches, a couple of points where he had impactful play on the field. So, you know, I don't know. You know, it's any given Sunday, but I think I think Rusty's right.
So Rusty, let's talk a little numbers here too as well. I mean, can you put a little bit of objective knowledge into your thoughts on bracket A? We're going to be doing this a little bit. I got some numbers. I know everyone's kind of thought about this a little bit, but you're looking at Dynasty first overall, could potentially make history by winning a 4th major event. No one's done that. Damage happens to be in their bracket. They were a team that won 3 events in a row to set that record, you know, kind of at the turn of the decade, you know, about 10 years ago when they were on their run and they were the best team in the world. But, you know, what are your thoughts statistically on, you know, on that bracket A?
So 2 things. I mean, the top teams in this bracket versus the bottoms is no questions. Those top teams can beat those bottom teams handily in this bracket. So really what you're going to come down to is the interesting storyline for this bracket will be Dynasty versus Damage, probably with either team going in with nothing to lose. Damage, as far back as I remember, we're going like 6 or 7 matches. Dynasty has always cut off Damage even on Sundays. Like if you look at the routes, Damage was doing good and got cut off by Dynasty. Damage made it all the way to the finals, got cut off by Dynasty. So, like, Dynasty has been a roadblock for Damage. So, like, you know, when you're in these brackets and you have this monkey that's on your back, if you can come into this game with not a lot to lose, you might be able to win that match and sort of relieve that roadblock mentally that's been on you for a while. So this makes a good bracket for Damage because they can beat those other teams, come into their last game, potentially beat Dynasty and get a roadblock, or they lose the Dynasty, but they still go into Sunday. So they have a good position, I feel like, it bracket wise, because that's the team out of all the other top teams they could have in their bracket. This is probably a good one for them, so they can try and take a swing without getting knocked out on Sunday. And so I feel like that's a good storyline for them.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Dynasty Damage rivalry right now is legit because, as you said, Dynasty's the stumbling block for Damage. They're the stumbling block for everybody. They're tripping everyone up on this crazy run. And then, Roy, and we could also start adding in some picks here. Obviously, it's a clear cut, unless we just want to be antagonistic and argue for fun. It's clear cut that with what the results that we've seen out of this group here is that Dynasty and Damage are head and shoulders, statistically measurably better based on what we've seen than Energy Elite, the Bears, and Level. I'm just kind of wondering, and Dynasty's been better than Damage because even if you look at the last event, I mean, Dynasty comes out of the wild card round, has to win 4 games in a row. They're plus minus. They had 15 points over, so it was 29 points, 4-14 against for a plus 15. That's pretty nasty. Damage was even 10 for, a lot of low scoring games for Damage. No surprise there. And they went even on their spread, 10 points, 10 against. But I think the big question in the storyline for bracket A is somebody going to catch a wild card here? Are we going to see a big upset? I mean, that would be a huge statement to the lead, and a huge for the programs if Bears, Level, or Energy Elite, which, Level's made it up to 3rd. Energy Elite's made some Sundays now. Bears are definitely capable. Roy, what are your thoughts? You think somebody's catching a wild card out of here? Do you think we're going to see an upset at all?
It depends on this field, right? Looking at the layout of it, it looks chaotic. Talking to Todd about, the field a little bit before we got on here. It's going to be a shooter's field off the break. Snake side's a little hard to get out to, but the Doritos seem safe and strong. So when you hear that, you look for a team with a strong, Doritos presence. And I feel like the Bears have that in Frank. And, could Frank come out and have a real good event for them and just be a threat on the field? Absolutely. And so if there's a wild card coming out of this bracket, I feel like it is going to be the Bears. Could they upset Damage or Dynasty? Obviously, any team can upset anyone, right? But, Dynasty is scary right now. Right? Let's be honest. They're very scary, especially seeing them at the last event. They lose Archie to injury. And next batter up, right? Mike Urena comes out and wins the golden barrel, becomes the event MVP. I mean, that is a scary team when you have the all-stars, the regulars, the Alex Frazes, the Yosh Raus, the Archies, not even really playing, late in Sunday. And, Chris Shearer and Mike Urena and these other guys are stepping up and winning tournaments. That's a monster. And as you said, Dynasty's ruined a lot of Sundays for a lot of teams, a lot of tournaments for a lot of teams lately. Damage, they're consistent. They're a beast team. They're a contender always. They're known for controlled, methodical paintball. But one of the things I think people forget is Damage also can play aggressive paintball, right? So if this is an aggressive field, we've seen them be able to adapt and play the way they need to play to win. That's why they're consistent. They can punch up, they can punch down, they can slow it down, they can play fast. And so, I think my prediction out of this bracket is you see Dynasty and Damage move on with the Bears as a potential wild card out of this bracket. Energy Elite had some changes to the roster for this event, mid-season, which is pretty significant. They cut a couple of their younger guys, Austin Castor, I think Hunter Murray, another one of the other younger guys. And then they added Trent Nita from the Ironmen and another kid's on their roster, Brandon Lane, who's rostered as a D2 player right now. That's a lot of change, I think, after 2 events in a season, and it's going to be interesting to see how that, all those moves work out for them coming into this one.
Well, Energy Elite had lost Caleb Abel, and then so picking up Nida, who, I'm not sure if he got cut or just left the Ironman, but it wasn't working out over there, and he is capable. He's very young. We'll still see if he can have the consistency needed to be that, elite level first attacker. And then Todd, talk to me a little bit about this bracket as far as who you think is going to be. Again, the question is obviously Dynasty and Damage who's favorites here. Do you think somebody's going to catch a wild card berth? Because like Roy had said on that D side, how strong do you think that D side is? You're coaching the Killers. You got a chance to play against the Saints and Damage, I believe you said at this past weekend. because we've seen a decent amount of slow layouts where we've seen low scoring games deep into Sunday, even in the prelims. I'm wondering, one that everyone's always asking, hey, how fast is this layout going to play? Which side's the strong side? You see all those bunkers over there on the snake side. It's like, it's a forest of bunkers over there. Rusty had said, we started the show before we went and started going live. He's like, can I get a recount on these bunkers? Because there's just so many bunkers out there. But the D side does look a little sparse. You see those bunkers out there all out wide. There's no back bunker over there. And with the Bears, Frank had a little bit of a rough go of it at that last event, as the D side players were basically playing on an island over there and the strength was going snake side. Are we going to see a similar, go-to play, Todd, on this layout where you're sending most bodies towards the forest on the snake side and the guys got to play on an island over there? Are we going to see strong side D side a little bit more than we saw at the last event? What do you think? Well,
the field, we practiced a little bit yesterday as it dropped, and the field played very fast. And that's going to benefit the teams with a high level of read and react experience, right? So I think all the teams that I'll choose is basically going to be able to play off the chaos, right? So it's gonna play faster than it looks. The snake is a risk reward type deal. You can see it from the middle of the field to the Doritos is super crowded. You've got those big wedges. So it's not necessarily playing Doritos. I think Dorito players that get out wide are going to be able to creep inside, move up, and create havoc right away inside, as opposed to traditional, I'm outside wrapping down the Doritos, as there's no back spot to prevent them from doing anything. It's sort of audibles on the box, along with stacking the heavy guns to the snake way, is going to be the majority of the points. And I think it's just, there's just too much for the other three teams in that bracket to handle to, prevail in a wild card. My wild cards don't come from bracket A.
Okay. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about bracket B. Heat, Hurricanes, ML Kings, Ironman, and Notorious. These are all interesting in their own ways. Heat is just so due for a win. They're so consistent. They're currently sitting second overall. The Hurricanes have been, the sophomore sensations already here this year. They're eighth overall, 2 7th places for them, man. Congratulations. I will pat you on the back, even though it's getting to the point with the Hurricanes for me where I might stop patting them on the back, just making Sundays. Yeah, this is their second year pro, but they've been very impressive. Last year, even going undefeated in the prelims in Chicago, and tip of the hat in respect to the whole camp over there. ML Kings, a bit of hit or miss, little rebuild, and then you got the Ironman rebuild there. Notorious, our brand new rookie pro team. Rusty, we'll throw it back to you here. Break this bracket down for me. Your thoughts on it? What do you think?
So I rate this bracket as number 2, second hardest. And that's because the ML Kings end up being like one of the stronger teams in that third tier. So again, like I'm sort of taking the perspective of like assuming I usually coach a top team or I'm a top team. So I'm looking at it like, what's the middle look like, and can we beat the bottom teams? And to me, this ends up being the second hardest. I got to throw respect on the Hurricanes. Like looking over their games where they're beating good teams in the prelims, and that's what it takes for you to get like, okay, this is not just like a no-name brand. Got to put respect on their name when you look at some of the teams that they're taking down, which is a challenge. You got to take down some of these big brands with big budgets. So to me, like they're just as good as anyone across that row. I rank them as the 4th on that row, just based on like results of the year.
That makes
but
sense, yeah.
Again, I think this bracket's sort of number 2 for me strength-wise.
Roy, what do you think? With the Ironman and Notorious sitting down there with a rookie pro team and then a team that is undergoing some rebuild, a decent amount actually. Some of those guys have been on that team now for a year, but it's a work in progress. Do you agree, disagree with here with Rusty? You think it's a little harder, maybe a little weaker? What do you think?
I think it's, one of the surprising things as I was diving into the numbers is the ML Kings have made 6 out of the last 8 Sundays, right? They've made 6 out of the last on Sunday. They've made it on at 6 times out of the last 8 events, right? And that was a little bit surprising
super wild card king.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the wild card
they make
kings.
it to the Yep, they make it to the Ochos. Yeah. And lose in the Ochos. That's typically what they've done. They've, out of those 6 times, they've only made it out of the Ochos once, right? But what that means though is they're winning in the prelims. They're fighting for that wild card spot. So odds say the ML Kings get in as a wild card. In regards to Notorious, we had a conversation. Excuse me. The last time we did this show, and the overall theme was we wanted to see how Notorious would stack up in that bracket of death, how they would fare against the big hitters. Well, we've all seen how they fared, and they did not fare well, right? They did not play good at that event. They struggled heavily. I don't know if he's going to show or what. By looking at their roster, I did not see Mikhail Kovar on the roster for this event. Do you know anything about that, Matt? Is he?
No, I do know that. I mean, everyone I talk to about Notorious everyone loves the team, and they are a hardworking squad. What a crazy story that they were able to beat out Blast Camp and Paintball Fit last year. As that was insane by 1 point by winning World Cup. But so everyone does respect Notorious. But one of the things that a lot of people say is like, well, I bet they better hope they keep Kovar around because he gets a lot of kills out there, man, and just the positions. I mean, he's a seasoned vet, helped put X Factor on the map a decade ago. I don't know. So I do know that that they didn't know if they're going to be able to keep him for the whole season. So I don't know. I think that's on the bubble there. But yeah, I mean, if they have Kovar, they have a lot better of a chance. If they don't have Kovar, again, I'm not taking anything away from those guys, but this is you have to prove to us that you have a deep enough roster if you want to be, especially if you want to make Sundays. I mean, even if you want to just stay a pro team. I mean, last year, look at the relegation conversation. It was crazy last year. We didn't even know going into Cup. It was super close. I mean, DMG basically, they made Sunday. All 20 teams last year made it to Sunday. DMG makes Sunday, and they still got knocked out. So Notorious, yeah, I mean, if they don't have Kovar, then some other people are going to have to step up and prove to us that they can hang with the best of the best in the world on a consistent basis. Start getting in that conversation. So I don't know. I probably should text Michael and see if he's going to make it or not.
It just makes that hill. Go ahead, Russ.
Coming off the last event, going into their last game was against Dynasty, and they got mercied. And that was like I talked about in the last show. This was their chance to play finals teams, get a taste. When you're already down in your games in the record, and you're not making Sunday, and you play your last game, like you got to air it out. And then, they got mercy to get sent out. So now it's how are they going to respond to that? They didn't leave the event with that sort of like, well, we were close in the game or we had a good game. I mean, they got blown out in the game. So that's how they left the last event.
Yeah. And I think that, if Mikhail's not going to be there, it just makes that hill that much steeper for them. Regarding the Ironman, one of the other things we talked about on the last show was, Shane Pestana coming in and Mike Paxton both taking over that coaching leadership role in that team. And what we hoped for was to see improvement, right? And so the first event they placed 17th. This last event they placed 12th. So we saw them play a little bit better at paintball. Are they going to be able to continue that improvement? Because if they are, then what that says in the numbers here, right? If they're going to move up a couple of spots, odds are they make it as a wild card. If they're able to continue that performance. They had a couple roster changes as well. Trent Nita, obviously no longer with the team. Word is that Dylan Boyum got cut. So they've tightened the roster up a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see if they're able to continue on that trajectory. Hurricanes, they've been consistent since entering the pro. The Hurricanes have been consistent since they, entered the pro scene. They've, made four Sundays out of 7. They're batting over 500. They're a team that's really focused on small micro goals, and they seem to be achieving those goals. So, it'd be interesting to see if they can, make a deeper run on Sunday if they make it out of this bracket. What you'd like to see from them is maybe make a semis now, start pushing for that next level. And then obviously Heat is just a monster. I think they've made 8 out of the last 8 Sundays they've played, but the highest they've finished is second place. They haven't won since the beginning of last season, right? Like, all of last season they didn't win, and this season they haven't won. The highest they've been able to get to is second. So can they push over that hump and actually get a first place out there?
Well, I heard the Heat's getting Mishka back. I talked to Todd. We had lunch the other day, and he was kind of talking about his squad because, and Rusty, you've coached the top team. We've all been on these, teams with all-stars, and it's hard. When you got a deep roster, even when you're rebuilding. So, as Roy was just saying, okay, Ironman are paring their roster down a little bit, and that's kind of needed. Carrying like 12 dudes, only 5 get to play. It's hard to, if you're as a coach, you're just begging these dudes, hey, somebody step up and show me something that's going to earn you playtime. That's what Shane, who coaches that team, told us back in the day. He's like, look, Matty, I love you, but the axe is sharp, kid, and if you're not going to get out there and kill for us, then you don't get to play. And you need to have faith in yourself. If I have faith in you, you need to have faith in yourself. And I need to see something. We got a bunch of young dudes, and if you want to get playing. So, and that really was probably one of the best things I ever could have heard. And so that's kind of what he's, we saw that out of Clay Hughes. I thought Clay Hughes stepped up for them at the last event with some big moves on the Snake side. So, and that kind of just goes for everybody in this situation. Yeah. And then, so even with Todd, it's like, okay, hey, Fedorov, if you're going out there and playing catch, bro, even if you're one of the greatest ever to pick up a paintball gun, well, we still got Ryan Moorhead, a former World Cup MVP, who's sitting on the bench right now. Let's get him some spins. And he had a really good event over there on the D side. So, it's going to help to have Mishka back, because that dude is his doesn't make very many mistakes. He's like a Yosh Rao. He's a great gunfighter, shoots bodies on the break, puts himself in great spots, holds lanes, intelligent, will stick to the game plan. I think that could be a big boost to them. But, as it is, and then, Todd, I definitely want to get your thoughts on this. But Rusty, I want to throw the question to you after we hear from Todd about this bracket, is that what's the mindset as the coach for these top dudes? It's different when you're the Notorious. If you're Ryan for Notorious, a little bit different. If you're Mike Bianca for the Hurricanes, if they've had some success, different there. Todd Martinez, different situation. Dave Baines. So I want you to kind of think about that real quick, Rusty. But Todd, what do you think about this bracket here?
It's not an easy bracket. It's not an easy bracket at all. I'm thinking the Kings will be one of the top 2 that advance, not a wild card, but straight out advance out of this. I believe the field caters to them and their style of play. They shoot off the break.
Is this your Florida bias right now? Todd,
no, it's not.
Florida bias right now, raising its head.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay, I'm just checking. I just got to ask the question.
It's not. They, Kyle was at the practice yesterday on the drop at Tiki's when we were practicing, and the read on the field, their like I said, their style of play and what they've shown and what they've done is doable with this bracket. In this particular situation, they will advance. I think Heat will advance. The Hurricanes are very, very consistent, and they will be the wild card for me out of this bracket. The Ironmen, I was with Paxson and Shane on the sidelines, trying to support in any way I could. They had a lot of people. They had a heavy roster, and starting to trim that roster will help them. It's going to make their job easier. It's going to make accountability better. It's what Shane told you. Listen, you need to play with confidence. You have to play with confidence, and you have to perform. You have to produce. If you do not produce, you cannot stay. End of story. And you can't carry that many people in this game, period. You can't, 8 max, 10 is, 10's a lot, I think, now. So,
10's a lot. Just real quick, Todd, because I kind of want to get some insight here. So, Rusty, we're having this coaching conversation right now. I agree 100% with what Todd said. That's just the way it is. But it is a different metric, or, there's a lot of different variables when it goes into it. When you're coaching a dynasty, when you're coaching the Houston Heat. So, Rusty, you've been in that position. You led Dynasty to a World Cup victory. And that is notoriously one of the hardest teams ever to coach, just because there's so many alphas there. There's so many legends, and everyone deserves to have their voice heard. But since we're, on this one, if you're Todd, how do you go about trying to deal with the guys that he has on that squad, and getting, keeping guys fresh, keeping guys hungry?
Yeah. I always like to say, like, as a coach, I feel like I've never sat anyone. If they're shooting lots of people, they're going to play. So it's really, as a coach, you're trying to observe patterns. The best coaches don't coach one-off. Like, you're not looking at a guy who has a bad game and then you're pulling him out. Good coaches are coaching based on pattern. What's the pattern and what's the trajectory of that pattern? Is it going up or down? Where's the trend line on how this guy's playing? So that's kind of like what you're looking at, is who's going to be the guys that are going to trend throughout the tournament. Come on Sunday, you're going to try and win all your prelim games and fine tune everything, but you're really trying to fine tune those players for the stretch of the tournament. You don't want to be in close games where you have to wear out all your good guys, where Dynasty has a lot of flex, where they play with a lot of things in the prelim, so their guys are fresher on Sunday. So you don't want to just pick a hard five and then wear those guys down come Sunday. They're set in their ways on the field. You kind of want to, like, experiment and make your final choices, but really it's up to the coach to observe the patterns and what product he can put out that's going to be best. And sometimes you do that based on the team. It's like, I feel like this player is going to do well against their style of play. But really it's you're observing and you're trying to figure out what's going to be the best combination to put out. That's your job as a coach, is you're managing who goes on or off the field. So that's the key for them, and also outside of being inside Dynasty's team meeting at the hotel, these other teams need to be observing, like, every single thing they do. Like, these guys have won so many tournaments. You need to be observing that and then figuring out how do you overcome that, like, whatever they're doing and whatever they're putting out there. So for me, it's looking at my bracket, but then I got to look at the other teams and prepare for Sunday. If I think that's where we're going to get to, you can't just look at all the games in front of you. At the same time, you got to be documenting and getting ready for whoever's going to come on Sunday and what your challenges are.
Roy, I definitely agree. It's part of an interesting story, though. So Roy, you got anything on this bracket before we move on to bracket C?
I just want to say, with Notorious, what I'd hope to see from them at this event is to really set some goals coming in and have some tighter matches, right? As Rusty pointed out, they got mercied their last match when they had nothing to lose. That's hate to say it, but that's a really bad luck, right? You that's the type of match where you go have some fun, you get some spirits up, you try some crazy stuff and you play with some aggression and make a little bit of a statement on the way out. So, from Notorious, I'd like to see them improve on margin at this event. And obviously, if the odds are they won't make it out of this bracket, but at the very least, improve on margin, play a tighter, more competitive game out there, and come out of this with a little bit more confidence moving into the next event.
No, I totally agree. Houston Heat is, to me, unarguably the best team in this bracket. So consistent, but hungry for that victory, as you guys were talking about. It's been a while. That's a team that they spend a lot of money on some badass players, and they're built to win tournaments. They've won multiple World Cups in a row, and they are overdue for a victory. They know that. Everyone knows that. So that's the story there as we watch Houston Heat. Most likely, I'm a betting man, and I would take any bet for any odds almost that Heat is going to make it out of this bracket and make it to Sunday. And if I had to eat my words and pay up on that one, it would be, wow, Jesus, Houston Heat finally didn't make a Sunday. What sort of a rip in the Matrix did we just watch? And then, to me, the most fascinating thing in this bracket is before we move on here to Group C, is the middle battle, Hurricanes and Kings. So Todd, you got Kings, a couple guys got Hurricanes. That's so interesting, because to me, that's okay. What's the statement to the league and the fans right now? You guys are mid-tier teams that can make Sundays. You've made a ton of Sundays. Okay, well, what's going to happen when they play each other here for those bragging rights and hopefully seeding to, who's going to be the top, a team moving on. Maybe they could show up, upset Heat. And then when we get to Sunday, who's actually going to, revel in the moment there and execute what needs to be executed to become an elite team, become a team that can go deep on Sunday. We just haven't seen that really yet out of the Hurricanes or the ML Kings. And then with the Ironman, and it's a little bit different in the Notorious because Notorious just got here. But then the Ironman, like Shane says, Mike Pax's going to tell him, hey, who are our guys? Who are our core 5 dudes? They're going to step up and go out there and slaughter people, for the Shield and renew the fire in the longest running pro team in existence. Let's move on to Group C. Rusty, we'll throw it back to you here. We got, Roy, you got one more thing for him?
Yeah, I just want to say this. We've talked a lot about, and I've heard this a lot lately, is that paintball, professional paintball is getting more competitive. And it is to a certain extent. What I feel like is getting more competitive is that mid-tier, right? So the teams that are making ochos and even towards the bottom end of quarters is where it's getting competitive. The top is still the top. We have those top upper echelon teams, and there's still the same teams that are dominating and making semis and finals. But the bottom portion of quarters and ochos to just missing the cut is where paintball has gotten more competitive. And, you're seeing more teams make Sundays occasionally, right? It's alternating more. Yeah. It's becoming less clear who's going to be in on Sunday in those wild card and bottom quarter spots.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. All 20, again, I said it earlier in the show, but all 20 teams made Sunday last year. Is that going to be the case in 2023? Well, there's still a lot of paintball to be played. Let's throw it over to Group C here. Looks like we lost Todd. Hopefully we get up, and he's back. Todd, you didn't miss anything. So, X Factor, Infamous, Diesel, Legion, and Uprising. Is this the bracket of death, Rusty, or where do you have it sitting? There's some nasty teams down deep in the tiers in this one.
This is probably the most interesting bracket. I put this as the third weakest. This is not the bracket of death to me. It's hard for my mind to unchain after years of competition that the Russian Legion is that far down and that weak. But I'm sorry, man. They're placing 16, 15. They're not good. And as much as it hurts my brain because I played against very elite Russian groups, you look at the logo and you go, okay, that's a tough draw. It's not the case. Until they prove otherwise, that's an easy game, in my opinion. That's the results that I've seen this year. They're in a rebuild. They have their struggles and all that, but the facts are the facts. That they don't make this bracket tough.
Well, real quick, before you go on. Just real quick, I agree with you, but I just want to point out and kind of add to a little bit of information to that. They are rebuilding, but I mean, they're still struggling when they will have 4 of their top 5 guys. So they got 4 all-stars out there, and then throw in, whatever D2 player they just picked up from Florida. And then, that still should be a team that, could scrap out, make Sunday. I'm also perplexed because if you have those 4 guys, and I know 4 guys is not a paintball team make, but I am also a little confused as well too. So yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's change of location of where those guys are at, what their previous training. I mean, these guys build players from nowhere. So I'm not going to say they're not eventually going to be good. I would never say that. I've seen these guys and I'm like, oh, they're going to be terrible this year. And then next thing you know, they're knocking me out in the semis and they're going to the finals. So I'm not going to say they're not going to be good, but right now, they're not making this bracket look tough. I'll say that. We got to unchain a little bit until they prove otherwise. That's just the facts. Infamous, I was dead wrong on these guys last event. Their bracket's better now. This is what makes this bracket weaker. If you swap out Dynasty and Heat was in their last bracket. That's the final first and second from last tournament. Would you rather have those 2 teams above you in the bracket? Or would you rather have Diesel and X Factor on each side of you? So Infamous, their bracket looks better. So it's sort of a softer bracket than they were in last time, from my opinion. And I thought Infamous didn't do a great rebuild. I thought I didn't think they were going to perform as well as they did. They came out and they made a top 4. So, as commentators on this stuff, after we started watching the tournament, I was like, oh boy, I'm going to have to eat my words on that. So they definitely
happens,
outperformed what I expected. So that's good. I know Travis is a good coach, but they definitely perform well. And Diesel, I mean, we'll get into details on Diesel, but they have to, like, you look at it and you're like, they got good players. They have yet to prove that matters. They're 1-3 and 1-3. They're amongst this bottom group in terms of result. Is players, I've been on paper teams. They're a paper team right now. So until they come out and prove something, I mean, they're just as it. I mean, they lost to Revo last tournament, and it was Revo's only win. So
yeah, no,
they're
just
fighting to try and get a 2-2 wild card, and they lost to Revo.
Yeah, we're all kind of definitely opinionated about Diesel because we been on paper teams and had to struggle and try to step up and be an actual team that goes out and performs. But I wanted to throw the infamous question to Roy, because both you and Roy have played on Infamous. So I mean, it's like kind of Todd and I with the Ironman. You got probably a little bit in the back of your head. You're like, come on, dude, just don't suck. Please don't suck. Don't tarnish this legacy that we had to work hard to build. And then within Infamous, like I never played on Infamous, but I always loved those guys. And I mean, some of my best friends were on those teams, including two of you guys. But they were more an antagonist, right? So, but Roy, I just got to wonder, you got to be a little bit proud. I mean, obviously they haven't won a tournament, and this is another question too, because guys will, be like, oh well, the whole like, oh, are you rebuilding? Are you not rebuilding? Well, until you're winning tournaments, you're kind of rebuilding. So that's my opinion on that. But yeah, Jesus, dude, they looked pretty sharpened. They looked really good at that last event. Roy, what were your thoughts on Infamous? Because obviously we got to talk about Diesel. That's one of the biggest stories in the game. But I couldn't, we gotta get Roy Richards' opinion on Infamous here.
So I think Rusty mentioning that they were rebuilding lit a fire under the guys on that team. I definitely saw some comments and heard some words. They did not take too kindly to that term, which is fine, right? Like, good, have a fire lit, go out there and prove otherwise. Whatever you want to call it in your mind, there was some changes to the roster, and people didn't think that the additions, versus the subtractions was good enough. Well, they came out with that fire and played well. So it was good to see them come out and really set a precedent, especially in that bracket they were in. That was a really tough bracket, and they ran deep, right? I think they only lost to Heat in the semifinals at the end there, by 1 point, right? They were that close to making the finals.
They lost to Heat twice. They lost to Heat in the prelims. Yeah. But they only lost to Heat. That was the only team that they beat Dynasty, ended up on the other side of the bracket, and then beat Impact on Sunday. And but this is how this is how a team becomes like, okay, the other question, and I've heard this because Joe Barrett came up to me and he was like, man, your guys' comments about how we don't have any elite threats, that lit a fire underneath us. And I was like, and I know Joe, and I'm like, hey, Joe, where's the lie in that, bro? Is there a lie in that? How many pro tournaments have you won and led the team to victory? Where are the guys on your squad? Because that's if you want to be an elite threat, you have emerging elite threats. We can discuss what we've seen in some beautiful moves and in that situation. So that, it's not like a hard objective definition. I mean, that's why we have these conversations. That's why sports are fun. But man, that's how you earn respect. You get a chip on your shoulder, be like, I'm gonna go out and prove that I deserve to be here at the best of the best. And we definitely saw a decent amount of that. They didn't win, but they barely lost pretty deep on Sunday. So I agree. I'm glad they have that fire. That's what this takes. Yeah, man. Like, you think we're just gonna sit around here and be like, it's all sunshine and roses, I'm just gonna pat everyone on the back all the time? Hell no, that's not how this works. This is supposed to be the tip of the spear for the entire paintball world on planet Earth. That's what this is. So sorry to interrupt. But I agree.
If any of these guys need some fire, just call me. I'm motivated. all I can offer is the truth.
And
Todd,
so,
what do you think, man? Sorry, Roy. Yeah, finish your thought, and then we'll get Todd in the mix.
It was nice to see them come out and play with that fire. Obviously, they have some still core guys that have been, in the pro scene for a long time. And if you're playing team ball as one unit, and one or two guys shines every other point, right? Like that's all you need to go deep. That team mentality with guys stepping up at the right times to go for a deep run. And Travis, obviously, as the coach, very, very experienced and a longtime player. And so he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And then Todd, I mean, you played against Infamous back in the day. And just before we move on and kind of get into the nitty gritty of some of these other squads, what are your thoughts on Infamous? Because they're one of the best teams out there right now. It's, a third place. But man, they had a +6 at the last event, 18 points for, 12 against. That across the board, D side to Snake side, that Snake was pretty nasty. Like Jonah and Zach Patient were getting down in there. Callie is going to be elite. He's proven to be elite. Thomas Taylor. I mean, they had a lot of guys step up for him, man. I'm really looking forward to see what they do in this bracket. And then also, Todd, what do you think about the weight of this bracket? How difficult do you think this bracket is?
Well, I think this bracket will be pretty much the toughest bracket. And here's somewhat of my reasoning. I think X Factor started off slow. They had very close 1-point games in the last deal. Infamous did the best they've done in a while, right? They, with Rusty's help, obviously, if that's what it takes, they owe Rusty a thank you, as opposed to, hey, you can't say that about me. It's what you said. Listen, produce. It's not participation medals. This is truth. This is exactly the standings don't lie. The outcomes don't lie. You can't hide them. You know what I mean? You produce, you move up the ladder. You work hard, whatever it takes to motivate you. If someone says something and motivates you, say it to me every day. Tell me how bad I am to fuel my fire, right? And I think Infamous is going to do well in this bracket. X Factor will move on, but here's where it gets crazy. If Infamous somewhat reverts back a little or loses that intensity or almost gets too big on themselves of, hey, we're in there now and we're making it happen, then they will still be a wild card to me out of this bracket, no matter what, because of what the unknown of Diesel. That's the determining. They got a chip on their shoulder. They cut A-Rod. They got Hinman, and they're going to try to, Hinman's going to try to control the, like we said, alphas, full of alphas. But the alphas they have are controllable. I don't know if they can take a Hinman control, because Hinman does a little bit different control than a Travis or somebody else. It's a little bit more.
Todd, we just talked about truth. Okay, you want to do the drops truth bombs is Mike Hinman. So, and maybe that's what they need. I mean, they may need a slap in the face instead of a pat on the back. And Hinman is definitely going to verbally slap you in the face, and he gets the most out of guys. I mean, everyone that's played for Mike will say, hey, that was hard and that was humbling, but man, it made me a better player. Because if you play under Mike Hinman, you either get better or you quit. Those are basically 100%. The only two ways that it goes.
Yeah.
So the guy, that's just kind of how it is. And that is a bit of news that just dropped. I mean, so yeah, just Todd, I do want your thoughts on that. I mean, because we've all, like everyone here that's on this show, it's the reason why, you guys get to do the show, is that because you guys have all been on top teams that have performed and done well. And then you've all been on top teams that also, like Rusty said, were kind of paper teams, maybe even just to start. So, I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, because Diesel to me is so compelling. I mean, you got Mark Johnson coming in, throwing haymakers at the paintball hierarchy, paying dudes, an awesome amount of money to be a pro paintball player. And they have drastically underperformed for the first two events based on what we know those guys can do. So yeah, Todd, you're, just a little bit more about that specific thing, cutting A-Rod, picking up Mike Hinman. And I know Roy, Roy, because you talked to Mark about this. So maybe Roy, we'll start with you, and then, Todd, we'll get your thoughts on it. And obviously, Rusty, we need, you to weigh in because you've been in this situation.
Let me finish the bracket. Hang on.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Just let me finish up the bracket. And Legion, rebuilding, not rebuilding, the problem with some of their players not in the they've just I don't know if they can do it. And if Uprising shows up, there's a possibility that they could hit a wild card.
Yeah.
Who
yeah,
do
looks
you
like
have,
he froze. That's a very interesting. Okay, yeah, you're back.
Who do I have coming out? I have
who do you have them
X
bumping out?
Factor. I have them bumping out Legion out of that bracket. I've got Infamous. Like I said, either Infamous will contend and make their own way out. Right, X Factor's out. Infamous will fight out if Diesel doesn't perform. Diesel performs, Infamous will be a wild card. And then if Uprising can pop up in some form or fashion on a Diesel, not on full cylinders yet, or Legion just flat, and a tough game, some hard fought games against on this layout, mind you, and this field catered against Infamous and X Factor to be more, try to slow them up and create close point games and keeping that margin close. Uprising could be a wild card out of it.
So that
Uprising's beat top teams over the years. They play spoilers a lot. They do make Sundays. It's possible.
Based on the schedule, that would be determined on day one, because they play Infamous plays Red Legion and then Uprising.
That's right.
So
that's exactly right. Those guys right there are going to settle it out right on Friday, right away.
Mm-hmm.
So Roy, sorry, Todd, you done or at least for now?
Yeah, go to Roy on Diesel.
Yeah. So Roy, what do you think? Because I know you had a long conversation with Mark.
Yeah, so I talked to Mark for a little while regarding the current situation of Diesel, where their heads are at, what's been going on, and why the adding Mike Hinman as the coach, and long story short, it was a lot of chaos in the pits, a lot of chaos outside of the pits. A lot of their processes were breaking down in the pits and outside of the pits. So they really felt like, Hinman coming in with that structure, that ability to hold players accountable, that ability to deal with a lot of alphas and get everyone kind of in line. And also, Mike Hinman has that reputation as a very hard-nosed coach, right? But he's been a father a long time now. He's aged on his own. He's become much more mature, just like any of us have at our older age, right? And so he may have softened his touch a little bit, right? Mark, felt even after the most recent practice that the team is more focused than they've been all year. They're hopping on Zoom calls, at least once a week and discussing, what's going on and that type of thing. They're warming up together. They're stretching together. So he feels like the team has become refocused, and he feels like Mike Hinman is going to lead them, in the pits, right? And be able to get all those alphas in line to a degree that's going to allow them to focus on winning, which is the ultimate goal. So I think if that, is true and they're able to do that at the event, I think we see Diesel, move on, which makes this bracket very interesting to me because, you've still got Infamous in there and X Factor, right? But if Diesel shows up and plays the way they can, like we talked about, they're a paper team right now. But if they turn that paper into reality, all of a sudden they could win this bracket, right? And so I think right now, based on what we've seen in history and numbers, I've got X Factor and Infamous coming out of this bracket with Diesel as the wild card. And I think the wild card could flip between any of those three. I don't think Russian Legion is going to come out of this bracket. And I do not think Uprising will. I know Uprising can. They played spoiler many times, right? They made some wild card spots, but I don't think this is the event or the bracket that's going to allow them to do that.
Yeah, and I don't think that Smotrop will be back for Legion. Legion had a -1 at the last event. They beat Revo and the Hurricanes Two good teams. Lost to Diesel and then lost to Damage. They lost to Diesel by 4 in their first game on Saturday. This is, as we got to move on here to Group D. But yeah, the Diesel story is so compelling. Infamous. X Factor too. I mean, X Factor, I really loved what I saw out of the guys from X Factor. I like that they're moving Billy around a little bit. That field did, but he was still getting sweet spotted out a little bit. And then Parrish had some real big moments for him on that D side. Danner was super clutch. I mean, that team's I feel like because they've moved around their roster a decent amount in the past year and a half. And I think that they could surprise a lot of people. I think X Factor is a legit dark horse right now. I know it's X Factor. They've won tournaments before in the past. They're one of our most legendary paintball teams, but I think that they got a really good chance moving forward here in 2023 to get to the finals. Just based on what I've seen and where those guys are at. Meter is an all-star. That their starting 5 is absolutely nasty. Infamous has been very impressive. They were very impressive at that last one. And then Diesel could pop off, win this tournament. Who knows? And then Legion, like I said, with the numbers pretty close at the last one. They're not going to have Smotroff at this one. And then Uprising is a team that can shock people. They've beaten, top teams in different situations throughout the years to play a spoiler. They've been around forever. They got a new owner. I'm just waiting to kind of see the fire out of, Uprising to kind of get out of this, little bit of a funk that they've been in. Because that team, that core veterans on that team have been together for like a decade. Anyone else got something on this one before we move on to D? Does anyone Russ, do you want to talk about Diesel a little bit? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting. Obviously, we've been observing this, and they've proven nothing. You mentioned Mike's going to come in and slap some faces. They've been getting face slapped all year, so obviously something's got to change. So obviously those guys don't want to do that. They want to perform. They're competitors, so I think we're going to see something out of them. It's a great position for Mike to come in because he comes in, nothing changes, team's terrible. He comes in, team goes up, which we're all waiting for this team to perform. So Mike comes in, they perform. That's a good position as a coach. It's like you're not coming in where they took second and you're trying to push them over the final hump, but then you take like an 8th or something. They haven't made Sunday. So you come in, you make Sunday, okay, already a plus for you as a coach. So Mike's got a good position to, it's all upside for him to come in and make a difference. That's exciting for a coach as you have an opportunity. It's not exciting if you jump on a team that's already like doing well and then you make them worse. So if you already have a team that's doing bad and make them better, that's always a good opportunity to see if you can fine tune what's essentially a good team is already there. So then the last thing I'll say about this bracket, I love that Infamous watched the show and got motivated because you see like the NBA analysis and then like they're getting tweets from guys on teams. They're like, hey man, why'd you say that about me? And why'd you talk about me having a bad shooting night or whatever? So I think that's cool. I love that.
Well, let's move on to bracket D. This one is compelling in a lot of ways, as they all are. Again, we're all fans of the game. We got these 20 best paintball teams in the world. Jesus, you want to talk about a cool story? New York Extreme in 2023 has a really good story. They've only lost one game in the prelims in the first 2 events. So sitting in a 7-1 in the prelims. And if you look at their plus minus, the only team that did better than them, even though, they took 5th place at this last event. But if we're just looking at points scored for you and then points scored against you, they were at a plus 14, 22-8. They only let 8 points get scored on them. And they really are starting to fulfill their potential. So they're tied 3rd overall with X Factor here, both sitting at 311 overall points for the series title. And what an amazing story. I mean, yeah, they dropped Harris, but other than that, they didn't do any crazy drastic roster changes, and they've just gotten better. They've tiered up. They are, like I said, fulfilling their potential. They got, Caro and, Josh Taylor. I mean, Pat Kraft is having the last 2 events. That's some of the best paintball I've ever seen him play. Very, very impressive impact here. Also in this one with Aftermath, Revo, and the Saints. So let's break this one down. Roy, let's start with you on this one. What are your thoughts here in Group D, our last bracket here for the pre-show?
It's another bracket. I feel like where the first 2 teams are strong right now. Obviously, Impact's a monster, but New York is showing us that they're putting it together. And I talked to Telford about New York and kind of what their mentality is right now, and they feel like they have a lot of micro goals that they've set for themselves, and they're achieving those. one of those being consistency. And they're really just trying to build off that consistency and achieving their goals to kind of push them to the next level here, right? They finished 4th at the first event, 5th at the second event. So really, what they're hoping for is semis or a finals appearance here, at the very least. They've got a bit of a skeleton crew for practice this weekend. From my understanding, I think they're only rolling with 6 guys to the layout due to some obligations and other things going on with some of the guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for them at the event, whether they're going to kind of have to run a skeleton crew through the tournament. Impact, they obviously are a monster, making 8 out of the 8 Sundays in a row. They got knocked out kind of early at the last one to Infamous. Right, by 1 point in the quarters they lost, and so I imagine they're going to come out with a little bit of fire. And they went 2-2 in the prelims as well, so they struggled a little bit at that last event. They snuck in as a wild card team, and I think that we'll see them rebound a little bit. Also, Dalton, he had to have surgery. I don't think he's going to be playing out there, so it's going to be Brandon Cornell down those Doritos. I would imagine maybe they roll JC that way, but somebody's going to have to step up for them on that Dorito side. Maybe Trevor Reeser can get more spins. He's a killer who's just kind of been in the shadow, or at least at the last event he didn't get a ton of spins. And could we see him play down the Doritos or those wedges a little bit more? And then Aftermath. I talked to Grayson before the last event, and they said they had very specific goals they wanted to achieve going into that tournament, and they hit them, right? They went for a deeper run on Sunday. So they showed a strong performance. I think they went 4-0 in the prelims, winning that bracket. And then they lost, in the quarters to X Factor by 1 point. So they lost one match at the last. Go ahead.
Joe, just real quick. With Aftermath, I just wanted to weigh in here because I was so impressed with Coach Ramirez. Aftermath in general, the players out there, Morris, Mazurek, I mean, those guys are really stepping up. Jordan had a big moment for them. I mean, Grayson, their roster is full of some dudes that are definitely earning their names out there. But I was just, every time we cut to the pits with how Ramirez has been coaching that team, and it's just interesting because his given name is Guillermo, which means strong-willed warrior. That's the translation for that. So I just think that the way that dude is bringing the intensity as a coach for that squad is just outstanding. So man, this is going to be a fun one. But sorry, continue, Ro.
Yeah, and they beat both X Factor and Impact in the prelims to win that bracket the last event, right? And then X Factor got the revenge when it mattered on Sunday morning. But like I said, they had very specific goals coming into that event. They achieved those goals. So, I guarantee you they have new goals for this next event, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that trajectory as well. So this is, again, when I was talking about earlier, paintball being more competitive, this is that middle pack that's become more competitive, right? Like the third team in, who's going to be getting these wild card spots. And, you could see Aftermath coming out of this winning the bracket again, possibly. I mean, odds are Impact wins this bracket, and it's a battle between New York and Aftermath for that second spot, and possibly even a wild card spot. Beyond that, you've got Revo, who's really struggled this year. They've placed 15th and 15th at the first 2 events, not making it on to Sunday. So they're going to have some major improvements to make it out of this bracket. And, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but they do have the Latin Saints in this bracket, which, unfortunately is pretty much a guaranteed at least one win for all of these teams. But I will say this about, the Latin Saints. One of the things we talked about the last event was the Saints finding their identity, playing tighter matches, not getting mercy ruled, right? Just playing more those tighter matches, playing that margin. And I think we saw a bit of that. I think they put up a better fight against the teams. They improved their margins at the last tournament, and it'll be interesting to see if they're able to, maybe sneak a match, win in there. That would be probably their next goal, is to get one win. Whether they can, I don't know. I know that they, as far as their roster is concerned, Alex Keys is no longer with that team. It was a bit of a seasoned pro for them. So it would be interesting to see what they show up. Are we going to get the Latin Saints to just get some? Go ahead.
I heard they might get I've been hearing they might get Zach Hill. He's a killer, so that could be big for them. But yeah, man, I definitely agree, because again, like we've been speaking about, this is, you have to prove it to us, to everyone, to yourselves, that you are capable with the roster you have to prevail here against the best paintball teams on planet Earth. And the Saints are not there right now, and they need to change. They changed last year. Obviously, they had the big splash in the beginning of the year. Team fell apart. Saved the season at at the end. Let's throw it to Todd real quick here, Roy. Todd, what are your thoughts on this last bracket? Oh, yeah, one more thing.
Just one last thought. Just with the Saints, if the Saints that show up that get mercy ruled and are getting 5-0 and creating these big margins for these other teams, that's going to have a huge impact on that wild card spot for them, right? So if they're able to keep it tight and play those lower point games and keep those margins tight, it's going to be a lot harder for a team to come out of this bracket with that margin, that wild card spot. That's it.
100%. Todd, what do you think?
I think Impact and NYX are going to prevail sort of handedly out of this. I think because of the Saints being in that division, exactly what Roy just said, it could let Revo get a high margin may supersede my wild card in that middle bracket, and puts my two wild cards at the end of the day, Hurricanes and Revo, as opposed to that middle bracket where I had, those other guys possibly coming out of it. So I think Impact is going to do very well, and NYX is extremely dialing things in. And it's what I preach to the Killers and to Tammy's team that I coach also, the Femme Fatales. The more consistent you play and the better off your results are, builds the confidence that you play. And with NYX, I think those, like you said, micro results, hey, this is our next task, just minuscule. We're not here to win the event, but we're going to make realistic goals of things that we know are problems with us right now, that are the stepping stones and building blocks to success, to win the event every time. So I think NYX is going to come out of that possibly 1, Impact 2, and with whatever happens, with this, and let's talk about the Saints a second. Like we did just practice them last weekend, and the coach, if they had a coach there, I wanted to, some guy was there. I never spoke to anybody. He never talked to anybody. I talked and helped 2 or 3 of the players. I said, hey, listen, instead of just trying to be all gas, like their little snake guy and this, that, and the other, instead of trying to be all gas, hit the brakes a second. They're just, you're getting the last. If you make it, your other guys are dead off the brake, and they just run, they're just running you from all over the world. How about a little self-preservation? If you make it, back off. Don't even, they know you're in the snake. They have to respect it. They don't know where you're at on this specific layout that we're playing. You could be to the 50 in seconds, and they expected that. So that's going to slow walk the snake side, and come all the way to the back end of the snake, the very head of your own snake, and cross across the field and eat up some of those players that are just running rickshaw down the Doritos or down through the middle, because you guys are, you're losing players off the break. You're weak, and the other team smells the blood, and they play with confidence because they're like, oh, we can just kill you. So they just run and do unethical, untraditional paintball stuff and just run on you guys and just shoot the shit out of you. So back up, cross it up, and try to survive. If I had to coach the Saints this next event, I can promise you it won't be a blowout. I'd have everybody hide, load up for the hilt, shoot off the break, cross up, shoot the most probable kill off the break, defend from the most defendable spots, and just grind it every time. And let the paintball gods, the attrition of the game, okay, so you lost to NYX or Impact at a 3-0 or maybe a 2-1 or a 3, whatever. But contain and control and just survive. Hide, cross up and hide. They got to come through the lanes. They got to come through the lanes, or they have to get close enough to exchange with you. Exchanging with you is a win. Not shooting anybody is not.
Hiding is an underrated skill for sure. Ask Chris Shear, who just played amazingly balling on an island for San Diego Dynasty out there, and he hit a lot. But he's hiding intelligently. Hiding doesn't mean you're not engaging. He's head checking, throwing a stream over there, but ultimately surviving more than he did. Did get some penalties, but yeah, man, he balled on an island all weekend long. Survivability is crucial. For sure. That's a vastly underrated skill because younger teams typically it's like, you got to speed the game up. Yeah, you got to speed the game up, and but if you're playing 7 points against a team that's on paper and also in real life better than you, like they're probably gonna win the majority of those points enough for you to take a loss if you do slow it down. And that's kind of the way the game has been played a little bit more. We'll just see about this layout. Rusty, we got to throw it to you though. What do you think, man? This is our last bracket here. Do you agree, disagree with Roy, Todd?
Yeah, I have a lot of agreements. Obviously, they made a lot of good points, but I put this as the hardest bracket. This was my tougher bracket. I viewed it as Aftermath was sort of the tougher choice on that row, and Impact to me was the tougher choice on the row. So those two, like your tier 2, tier 3, are what's the toughest on the row. That's going to make a tougher bracket from the perspective of NYX. Now, to point out, NYX went 4-0 last tournament, but they also, if you look at this bracket, they played ML Kings, tier 3. They played Ironman, Bears, and Level, tier 4, tier 4, tier 5. So they essentially had a soft bracket last tournament. Not to take away from the results, I think this bracket's better for them because they won't go into Sunday only playing soft teams. Like they'll get a game against Impact, which is a final game. They'll get a game against Aftermath, which is a scrappy team. So for NYX, I'm not taking away from their chance. I'm saying this bracket's better for them because they'll actually get some games that matter in the prelims versus their last run. I mean, all those teams had terrible results. So they had high margin games where everyone else had close games. They had high margin games. Then they come on Sunday and they lose a 2-1 to Houston Heat. That they weren't prepared for the finals based on the prelims like they will be this time. They have a chance to have a little more preparation going into that final game with Impact. Now, I still think Impact was 2-2 last tournament. I mean, they lost to Aftermath. They lost to X Factor. That's not common for them. And I think they have the tools on this layout to shoot well off the break and guys that can scramble and get into positions. I think this field will play good for Axel, being an aggressive, tiny little snake guy. I think they'll do pretty good. I have them winning this bracket. And Aftermath, I think between them and New York, it'll be who's a wild card, who takes the bracket. No hope for the Saints. I'm sorry. Not a lot to say about that. Todd pretty much covered it. And Revo, they did beat AC Diesel, but they pretty much got mowed down the rest of the games. So the bracket's going to kind of sit. I would only swap Impact in New York on that final game, I think is where that'll play out. But I think Impact has a good chance of being a contender. They had a terrible result last time. They beat Damage on Sunday, so their prelims weren't great, but they wildcarded, beat Damage, which is a heavy hitter, and then end up losing to Infamous. So I know they're going to be hungry. They were on the right path and got offset. So I think they'll perform well in this bracket.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Impact with their, just real quick here as we got to kind of wrap things up, but Impact has something to prove again. They won 2 in a row last year, midseason to late last season, and lost J-Rab and Mouse. Now no Dalton. So I think that I think they're going to be hungry for it, man. There's a lot of guys on that team that were all-stars on the team before they got picked up by Impact. The Reesers, the Matt Derulas, Nick Laval's. Those guys have really, Dave's been mixing a lot of guys in. I do think Axel could feast out here. Brandon Cornell basically plays every single point almost for Impact and has for years. And he's very capable on a D side like this. So I think they got a chance to win the whole thing. I can't wait to see what Aftermath brings. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Then to finish off this bracket, man, I'm crying because Dalton, when I talked to Dalton about him going to Impact and how all the AC Diesel stuff shuffled out when he was going to go there, I go, you didn't tell him that you're only going to play 2, maybe 3 events for the year.
He's a bit of a glass cannon for sure.
And now he's got surgery. And man, I'm crying.
Hey, the props to Dalton though. Hey, Dalton. Yeah. I talked to Dalton during the, he's like, I saw his elbow. I mean, his elbow looked like he had a softball in it, man. I mean, that's barely an exaggeration. It was huge and puffed up. And I asked him, I'm like, you all right? Because he was, kind of messing with it, and he was all like armored up, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, what do you think? And because he, I guess he tore ligaments, but he's moving his arm around like there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, it looked like he just took like a really, like maybe pulled a muscle or something. But I mean, that's a tough dude. He went out there and played on that basically for the remainder of the event. And balled out pretty solidly for him with blown out ligaments in his arm. So Dalton is definitely a tough dude. He left it all out there, but historically Dalton has been, unfortunately for him, a little bit of a glass cannon, man. Like he does get injured, and he's not, he's been doing this at a high level since he was a teenager, and the body does not last forever. So we all hope that he's going to heal up quick, because he obviously still has it, as he came out at World Cup MVP for Dynasty last year. But yeah, it is a little bit of a bad break, but I still think. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not surprised he's out for like an event. I'm surprised it wasn't his knees. So random occurrence on his arm, but usually it'd be his knee or something is blown up. That was his common injury.
Yeah, and then Revo, like you guys are breaking down, really does need to step it up, as 215 places are not going to do it with Tom Ford coming in and trying to spend some money and build a team that's going to be winning tournaments, and that is not where they're at right now. So they got to take some harsh looks at things and figure it out. Roy, you got something for me?
Yeah, I was just going to say, knee injuries are brutal. They suck. So I'm glad it wasn't his knee. As much as the elbow sucks, it just feels like the knee is such an integral part of, your ability to move. They take forever to heal. So I'm hoping for the best for Dalton. Want to see him back out there competing.
So last questions before I let you guys go. So it's 2 questions, but we'll do them as quick as we can here. The first question is, Rusty, we'll start with you. Do you think that Dynasty will win 4 events in a row? Because that's what's at stake right now. That's my first question.
No.
Okay. No.
Based on history, Chicago has always been a mid-year struggle for them. So like you can go back as far as you want. Like Excessive won like a Chicago. Naughty Dogs beat him at a Chicago. I lost to Houston Heat coaching at a Chicago. So if there was a chance for them not to win on this amazing run they're on, this would be the door that maybe people could open. Even like the Time Impact one, they won the 3rd event.
We're going to be in Philly.
So the 3rd event, mid event. I guess I'm saying mid event.
Okay, you're saying mid. Yeah, history with okay, mid event.
Yeah, Chicago was always the mid event, mid-season event. Like Impact won a mid-season event when they won during this run. So if there's a crack in the armor, I'm still going to take them for the win. But I say that there's a chance for other teams if historically this would be their chance.
All right, so this is my second question then. Is Dynasty doesn't win, who's the one team that wins? You get one pick.
I'll take Impact.
Okay. Roy, same 2 questions to you. Do you think Dynasty will win 4 in a row and put some history into the books? Put more history into the books, as they've written a lot of the history for our sport.
I'm going to go with yes, they're going to win this event. They look unstoppable right now. And like I said, they lost Archie at the last one due to injury, and Mike Urena stepped up and helped carry them through that finish. And they're playing with a ton of confidence across the board. And I just feel like they're going to continue that. If they were not to win this event, I'm going to go with Houston Heat. I feel like they've been on the cusp. They're right there. And based on the layout and what I'm seeing, I feel like they're a team that could take advantage of this layout big time. And so that would be my pick to win it if it's not Dynasty.
Yeah, I also think Dynasty has a really good chance of putting the history into the books. And everyone watched like that. They have that team's just full of all-stars, but Jesus, you want to talk about some perfect paintball, somebody that's playing some amazing paintball the past couple seasons. I mean, his whole career, but Marcelo Margot, man, going back and rewatching a lot of the games, which I do to put narrative stuff together. It's like that dude. I mean, I almost wanted to say we were talking about hiding well, but he also has to gunfight a lot. Like Shear doesn't always have to gunfight in the situation that he's in. He needs to stay alive, which he's done a good job at, but it's been tip my hat and respect to Marcelo. If he can keep that up, and if they can get Greenspan going too, with all the other guys we're talking about, like, I mean, they got a really good chance of winning 4 in a row. So Todd, same question to you. Do you think the Dynasty can do it? Sorry, go ahead, Roy.
I was just going to say, Marcelo's been playing kind of that QB role for them a lot, right, on the field, and he's doing it really well. He's playing very, very consistent, sound, technical paintball, but at the same time, when he needs to step up and be creative and aggressive, he's able to do that as well. He has been playing lights out. 100% agree with you.
And then, so Todd, you'll be our last guy here to go. So do you think Dynasty can do it? And then if they don't win, who's the one team that you think is going to take the victory here in Philadelphia?
Well, I had them picked last event to win, and I mean, we talked about it, the depth of their bench. The depth of their bench, their entire team, you get one of the starters. There's no real starters. You know, it gets very confusing with Dynasty to say there's 5 starters when they're all stars. Literally, Michael showed up, killed it. You know what I mean? I mean, they got Marcelo doing the role that he's doing now. Everything, the way that it's all working, it's hard. It's hard, and I'm just, you know, you can't not put your money on Dynasty at this point. I don't care if it's 10 in a row. It's
possible.
It's the confidence of winning. You know what I mean? At right now, you know, if Vegas had to put odds on it, which they will in the future, it's going to be a big spread. You know, it's going to be a big spread.
And one other team, just one.
I think it's sort of a toss-up. One's head and one's gut, right? One's head and one's gut. I think X Factor is going to have a shot at it along with Damage. I think Damage is playing with purpose with that loss on early Sunday, and it was a close, very weird loss, and it is what it is, but it's a loss no matter how you get it. And you know, I'm in those guys' camp in respects to the practices and so much. They jumped out early as opposed they take a couple of weeks off right after. They're right back in it. They had an extreme fire and determination to try to tighten it even more so that little anomaly doesn't happen again, right? And I believe Ryan is going to get X Factor into a certain position to where Meter and those guys are going to perform extremely well Sunday afternoon.
I can't disagree. That's going to be fun. It's going down June 16th through the 18th. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Roy Richard, Rusty Glaze, Todd Adamson, legends in this game for the pre-show. And yeah, man, and we still got a lot of paintball to play this season and see how all these stories develop. So is it going to be Dynasty with 4 in a row? Making history yet again, or is somebody going to step up to contend with them? Because it has been the Dynasty show for quite a long time now, going on about 2 years and 2 decades of precedent-setting excellence for the boys in blue. I'm Matty Marshall here at Go Sports. Thank you guys so much again, and make sure you tune in for the Mid-Atlantic Major, again, going down June 16th through the 18th. Guys, you have a blessed day. Take care.